You're now watching Because Geek. The first thing we should mention is, surprisingly for some, Littlefinger's confusing line to Sansa. In a very metaphorical way, he's just telling Sansa to be ready for everything, by expecting everything, instead of expecting only one thing and being ready for only one thing. If you think about it though, this line is also a bit of a fourth wall being broken, because Littlefinger is sort of talking to the audience here, not just Sansa. He's basically telling us to pay attention to foreshadowing, and also being straight up about the fact that history will repeat itself, when he says,
"Everything that happens will be something that you've seen before."
Right after Littlefinger's line, "Everything that will happen is something that you have seen before," we get the arrival of Bran in Winterfell, someone who definitely has seen things that have happened before, as he says himself when he explains it to Sansa. Seeing Littlefinger telling Sansa about fighting with her mind, and then seeing Bran right after, reinforces my belief that Bran will be the one to look into Littlefinger's past, maybe as a request from Sansa, or maybe because he gets suspicious and that's how the truth about him will come out. Now, going back to the point about Littlefinger telling us that history will repeat itself, Bran is of course the key here for everyone to be ready. The things that he sees from the past are the things that will happen again. For those of you who missed my first video, I'll quickly restate that I like using the continuity between scenes as foreshadowing. And I think that this time the writers may be trying to connect Bran and Sam by placing their scenes next to each other. Have you guys ever thought of how awesome a team of Bran and Sam would be together? With his new knowledge of history and events from reading so many books, Sam could point Bran in the right direction during his green scene. Sam can tell Bran which important event he should check out, and Bran can give Sam a lot more insight about that event. It seems likely that Sam finds out a lot more about the last long night and who ended it, maybe by reading more books or even on those old scrolls that he was told to make copies of. Even if he doesn't find anything concrete, all he needs is hints, and then working with Bran, who would help put them all together. There was even a line in this scene that may be foreshadowing it further.
Perhaps our paths will cross again.
It's Jorah who says it about himself and Sam, but this could also apply to Sam and Bran, whose paths have crossed once before. I wonder if Sam leaves the Citadel to go talk to Bran specifically. We'll see. It's strange that Maester Walken would mention Maester Luwin's copies of every Raven scroll, since Winterfell was burned down. Those records should not be there still. But skipping over that fact, a lot of people noticed Littlefinger shooting a quick look at Maester Walken when he said this, giving us the idea that there's something in those records that Littlefinger doesn't want to be revealed. It's hard to say if this look really was a worried look, or simply the actor looking at who was speaking at the moment. But if it is a worried look and we want to speculate on the contents of those scrolls, we just need to remember that it would have to be something from before Maester Luwin died, so only up until the moment that Theon took Winterfell. This means that it won't be related to the Boltons, and there's not much else that Littlefinger should be worried about before that. The message he made Lysa send to Catelyn was burned before it could be copied, and if it's anything related to Rhaegar and Lyanna, we already have Bran at hand for that. So I don't know, let's discuss this in the comment section. Speaking of Rhaegar and Lyanna, there were plenty of references made in this episode connecting Jon to both of them. The Lyanna connection was very subtle, and it may all just be in my head, but I thought of her when Tyrion, referring to the dragons, said to Jon,
"The mother is waiting for you."
I thought it was kind of symbolic of Lyanna also being the mother of a dragon, and in a way, waiting for Jon to find out about her. Then there's two references to Jon being the son of Rhaegar. Once when Davos tells Dany that the people in the north followed Jon because they believed in him, which is something that Ser Barristan Selmy told Dany about Rhaegar. And the second one is when Dany says that we all like what we're good at, and Jon says he doesn't. Just like when Dany told Ser Barristan that she heard that Rhaegar was good at killing, and Barristan tells her that he never liked it. Other than references to Jon's parentage though, there were also references to him being a Targaryen, like when he says he's not a Stark and Drogon flies over him at that exact moment. Or when Dany ironically states that she is the last Targaryen, adding Jon Snow's name at the end of her sentence. And the last reference I found for Jon being a Targaryen seems to include Tyrion as a Targaryen as well. When Jon approaches Dany watching two of her dragons fly off in the distance and she says,
"I named them for my brothers, Viserys and Rhaegar."
The last two characters we saw a lot in the scenes before this one were Tyrion and Jon, and now Dany is talking about Viserion and Rhaegar. Coincidence? Or are David and Dan going to go for it? It has been theorized that Viserion belongs to Tyrion because of the name similarities, and that Rhaegar belongs to Jon because it's named after his father, Rhaegar. This scene seems to be hinting at that. Tyrion is already the closest man to Dany, and Jon will likely become the next, probably replacing the two brothers that she says she lost. Although, Jon will potentially be more than a brother to her, but we know that's not rare amongst Targaryens. I am calling all of these references, but together they become one big foreshadowing. It's about time that Jon's true parentage is revealed, and it definitely feels like all of these references are building up to it. They're foreshadowing that it is coming soon. And I only mention Jon's true parentage because I've always had a feeling that even if Tyrion is a Targaryen, it will never be revealed. But who knows what David and Dan are willing to do now. Oh, and to add to this, we also got that scene where Bran says he needs to speak to Jon, right after this foreshadowing scene, where Dany tells Jon about Viserion and Rhaegal. There was one piece of foreshadowing that I correctly guessed in my first video from this series, when I said that Jon's line about not judging a child for their father's sins would come into play again with Dany, and it certainly did.
And I ask you not to judge a daughter by the sins of her father.
But I don't think we're done with this line yet. Daenerys uses it, and immediately goes on to judge Jon for the same reason, saying that Ned was Robert's best friend, so he's guilty too. But not only that, I think it'll become even more important when Dany has to meet Gendry, the son of Robert, the man who sent assassins after Dany. She will have to forgive Gendry for the sins of his father too. Tyrion also mentions a similar line later on in the episode when he says,
Children are not their fathers. Luckily for all of us.
When he says this, I immediately think of Cersei. Cersei learning from Tywin is something that has been coming up a lot this season, and I'd say Tyrion is right in saying that luckily for all of us, she is not just like Tywin, and hopefully that's a good thing. But this line also has another symbolic meaning to me, and that is in reference to Jon not being his father Ned, because Ned isn't his father. So hopefully that means that, luckily for all of us, Jon won't die in a trap like a Stark, because he's a Targaryen. Speaking of Cersei being like Tywin and Jon dying in a trap like another Stark, I keep getting the feeling that Jon will end up in a Red Wedding type of situation with Cersei. We know he will eventually have to go visit her in King's Landing, and I just hope he listens to Sansa and that he's ready for what's coming. I hope they have learned from their mistakes and that he's truly not another northern fool. The foreshadowing in this episode for Cersei isn't very good though, especially when it comes to Euron. There were two lines that foreshadowed him turning on Cersei, which is quite expected. But yeah, it was first when Jaime is talking to him in the throne room and mentions it as a possibility.
And if you turn on us, they'll cheer to see your head mounted on a spike.
And then when Tycho says it to Cersei.
Euron Greyjoy is loyal to me.
For now.
Other than Euron turning on Cersei, there was foreshadowing for Cersei becoming a Mad Queen. When she needed to have sex with Jaime after poisoning Tywin's sand. Murdering people used to arouse the Mad King the same way, and he would often have sex with his wife after killing people. This connection could be a coincidence, but it's definitely worth pointing out because there was more foreshadowing for Jaime to be the one to kill another Mad Monarch again, in that same sex scene. It was very subtle, but this quick shot of his golden hand right when Cersei enters the room is suspicious to me. The prophecy says that Cersei will be choked by hand, so if I am correct in assuming that this shot was foreshadowing, then that would be the third one I point out in this video series. And then there was of course the conversation Jaime had with Olenna, full of hints that Cersei and Jaime will be the cause of each other's deaths. Cersei may go mad with jealousy as well. She does mention to Ellaria that she couldn't bear to see Myrcella in another woman's arms. Could this mean that she will see Jaime in that situation as well, and freak out? Maybe in Brienne's arms? There should be more Jaime and Brienne interaction at some point, so maybe. Going back to the conversation with Olenna, what she said about Tyrion and Daenerys thinking that Cersei and Jaime would defend Casterly Rock is the second mistake that Tyrion has made. The first one being, as he said it himself, not being able to predict the sea attack by Euron. Tyrion's mistakes are becoming a pattern, and it was foreshadowed at the beginning of the episode, when he said to Jon that if he were Jon's hand, he would have advised against coming to Dragonstone. There was a long pause after that line as if to make us pay attention to it. Sure, it could mean that Jon shouldn't have come to Dragonstone after all, but it can also mean that Tyrion is giving bad advice lately. So far, it seems like coming to Dragonstone was good for Jon. Also, that whole scene between Tyrion and Jon may be foreshadowing how their relationship will continue to play out. Tyrion made it clear that Jon was better than him at brooding, and not looking good. It was a joke, of course, but it can definitely be foreshadowing that it will become a pattern, and if it does, it will for sure begin to affect Tyrion in bad ways. We've discussed the possibility of Tyrion getting jealous of Jon when Dany starts liking him too much, so this could be the beginning of it. In this same scene, there is another foreshadowing line, when Tyrion says,
And sometimes there's more to foreign invaders and northern fools than meets the eye.
He was talking about Jon and Dany coming across as selfish and stubborn, when there's more to them. But this line can be applied to so many other things. There's definitely more to this northern fool, Jon. First, he's a Targaryen. And not only that, he could also be Azor Ahai, just like Dany. So there's definitely more to the both of them that way. But Dany isn't the only foreign invader. The White Walkers fit this description as well. And it has been widely believed that there is more to them. More than just a need to kill humans. This line could be foreshadowing all of this. I hope we do find out. A while back, I shared my theory that it would be Jorah, the one who would ultimately convince Dany to believe what Jon has to say. And although it seems like Dany may be starting to believe Jon already, she still isn't willing to drop her plans and go help him. Tyrion mentions Jorah Mormont as the person who made him believe in the White Walkers. And it made me wonder if it was foreshadowing that it would also be a Mormont who does that for Dany as well. Tyrion got her there halfway already. I think Jorah could do the rest. Especially if he finds out about Jon avenging his father's death. Jorah may feel like he needs to pay him back for it. And the conversation may involve Longclaw, the sword that used to belong to Jorah at one point. Jorah may not be the only one helping Jon out though. The Iron Bank may do so as well, through Tyrion. I got this idea when I saw this scene with Tycho and with Cersei saying that her debt will be paid back. And then we immediately see Tyrion after, who meets up with Jon on the cliff. It would make sense for Tycho to eventually fund Jon instead of Cersei. So is that what this means? Or will Tyrion be involved in some other way? At least we know that the actor who plays Tycho will appear in Season 8 as well. So he's definitely playing a big role here. We shall see. Tycho also said something very interesting while talking to Cersei.
But sometimes tragedies are necessary to restore order and rational leadership.
This is, again, a line that could apply to many things, but I'm thinking mainly about defeating the dead as restoring order, and a tragedy will definitely be necessary for that. But this, combined with a few other clues in this episode, makes me feel that this tragedy will be a sacrifice. One of these clues is when Dany tells Jon that,
Together, we will save this country from those who would destroy it.
Dany was talking about people like Cersei destroying Westeros, but the writers probably had the enemies to the north in mind here. When you think about this line referring to Dany and Jon working together to defeat the White Walkers, the theory that Dany and Jon will be some sort of Azor Ahai together, like Melisandre has been trying to tell them, gains a bit of credibility. But then we see Dany very interested in what Davos was saying about Jon taking a knife in the heart for his people. And when I heard those words coming out of Dany's mouth, for some reason it made me feel like this is what's going to happen to her as well. Will Dany need to be sacrificed like Nissa Nissa? If you don't know who Nissa Nissa is, there will be a link in the description explaining it. And I've already given you 25 clues and foreshadowing, but there's one more line I should point out because it relates to what we're talking about. Dany says that it was faith in herself which kept her going, not faith in any gods. I think this may be related to how men will end up beating the Night King. Not by believing in the Great Other or the Lord of Light, but in themselves. Maybe even just Dany specifically, if she ends up having to do something like give her life in order to gain victory. Leave a like if you like this video, subscribe for more. Thank you so much for watching and I will see you in the next one!